Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in about 60 seconds. We want to give everyone a chance to join, get settled in, get that last little bit of coffee. And we also want to get started on time. Thanks for your patience. We'll get started in about 45 seconds.
I took that coffee to heart.
All right, let's get rolling. Welcome to today's webinar, CauseMic's Top 3 Nonprofit CRM Picks, the ultimate overview. We're going to have a presentation today followed by Q&A. Feel free at any point in time during today's presentation to use that Q&A feature, and I'll have those questions queued up at the end for our two presenters. Today, you're going to hear from Kelsey Ingram, CauseMic's Technical Director, and Matt Scott, CauseMic's CEO. Kelsey and Matt have helped hundreds of nonprofits align their technology to an actionable fundraising strategy for sustained growth. You're in for a real treat today. Take it away, Kelsey and Matt.
Oh, thanks, Brack. By treat, you might mean a welcome distraction from the news feed. Recognizing that we scheduled this the day after the election, and I will take full responsibility for that. I didn't even give that any thought, and perhaps you came because you wanted a distraction. But yeah, just want to acknowledge that, and hopefully we can show up our best selves and get through this content and leave you all feeling like you've got something meaningful to move forward with in terms of this information. So, as Brack mentioned, I am so excited about this webinar, and I'd love for everybody to just take a second and answer the two questions that we have in the poll. This really helps us understand where you're at, who's on the webinar with us. The first one is really centered around when are you looking to migrate off of your CRM, and why are you looking to do that? This will help us kind of center what we talk about in terms of our presentation. So let's give that just a couple more seconds. All right, what are we looking at here? Looks like at least half the people on this call are in the right place because they're looking to migrate in the next 6 months. So probably looking at hear what CRMs are best. Others are not. And then functionality, Kelsey, that seems like the big thing. People feel like their current CRM lacks functionality that they need. So that's 65% of people who've responded. So, all right, Brack will end that, and we will move through the webinar now. Great. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Here's our agenda. First up, I'm so excited. Kelsey's going to be walking through this really in-depth research project that we conducted. And basically, like, this was inspired by, I don't know if anyone else here is a New York Times subscriber. I love Wirecutter. I love that Wirecutter does an unbiased deep dive into different products. And I brought that up with Kelsey a while back, and on her end, she was really curious about some of the changes that were happening in the landscape and what CRMs would be valuable to our nonprofit clients and customers. And then from my perspective, I was like, gosh, this seems like such a cool opportunity to take the experience that we have over the last 10 years helping to support nonprofits and apply that rigorous process to identify the best CRM. So Kelsey's going to walk through that, super excited, and then do the big reveal about what it is that we like about each of our top 3 CRMs. And then I'm going to take over. I'll talk a little bit about how to really identify which CRM is right for you. And we're going to talk about a unique approach to that, something that we've seen work over and over. And then probably the reason why you really came was to ask us anything. And this will be an opportunity to put us in the hot seat, ask us questions about the various platforms and why we selected them. So that's what we've got covered. And now I am going to hand it over to Kelsey, who is our tech director here at CauseMic, which means that she oversees the team and the projects where we're doing digital transformations, where we're implementing technology for our clients. But before coming to Cosmic, Kelsey actually worked in a nonprofit and led a digital transformation at a global nonprofit. So comes with that firsthand experience as well within the seat. So yeah, all right, Kelsey, over to you.
Thanks so much, Matt and DeBrack. Love the energy. I need it this morning. Appreciate it. And I wish I could see everybody's beautiful faces right now. But yeah, as Matt said, there has been a ton of moving and shaking in the nonprofit CRM space over the last 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions that have been happening. Bonterra has been buying up a number of different platforms, including Every Action, Donor Drive, Network for Good, Salsa, and more. Boomerang acquired QGive and Kindful. Salesforce released the new nonprofit cloud product, and Virtuous secured over $100 million in growth capital. So there's a ton that's been happening in the space. And as we were seeing all of that, we were like, wow, this is just a lot to process. And for the everyday nonprofit leader to understand what's going on in the space. And that's our job at CauseMic, is really to make sure that we're helping you, the fundraisers, the leaders, understand what's happening out there, and you don't have to keep track of all those moves that are happening in the space. We're doing that for you. So yeah, we're going to take you through that today. So why trust us? Some of you on the call today might already be familiar with CauseMic and know that we're a nonprofit growth consultancy that develops strategies to drive fundraising, marketing, and technology. And some of you may be a little bit new to us. So you'll hear a little bit more about how we do all that work later today from Matt, which is super exciting. But on this specific topic, we decided to dedicate extra staff time to going deep on researching the space, because we were seeing enough movement and change that we felt it was necessary to do so for you. So we took a 4-month process from inception to finish line to determine the top 3 CRMs that we would recommend to fuel nonprofit fundraising in 2024 and 2025. And since CauseMic has gone through what feels like a zillion vendor evaluation processes with our clients, we decided to get in both the driver's seat and the passenger's seat with our own process and apply it to this project to determine the best CRMs for you. So how did we do it? There were 4 different phases or components to this process. So first, we had to assemble a team, the Avengers, the crew. We handpicked a team of 7 different researchers on our team with a variety of different experience. So we had 3 tech specialists. We had 1 fundraising/marketing specialist, 2 leadership team members with strategy experience, and then also 1 developer. And we wanted to make sure that that team had a pretty wide variety of perspectives when evaluating these platforms against everyday nonprofit needs, technical strength and rigor, and also just longevity and reliability and stability of the companies that we're recommending. As I said, there's a ton of change, and you want to make sure that you're picking a nonprofit, or sorry, a CRM that's going to be future proofed, still going to be here in 5 years and be reliable for you. So yeah, we had to assemble that crew was going to have that good perspective for you. Step 2, if you want to go to the next slide, Matt, was requirements gathering. So just like we do with our nonprofit clients, we went through and we compiled a list of 47 of the most common CRM requirements that we come across most often during our technology assessments and our implementations. And we knew that not every single nonprofit is going to need everything that we put on that list, but we wanted to be comprehensive without being totally exhaustive of every single possible use case. So you should see a number of things on here that you recognize from your day-to-day work, like receipt generation, donation forms, volunteer management, and well screening. And so we went through and we evaluated all of those different requirements. Step 3, if you want to keep going, Matt, we had to figure out which CRMs are on the list, who's out there. On the first slide, you saw that there are hundreds of CRMs, but we selected 22 CRMs to evaluate. There's definitely some more out there. I don't think that this is literally every single CRM that's in the market, but we wanted to target this towards CRMs that are most commonly coming up for nonprofits in the general space. So not necessarily in specialty spaces like memberships and associations, because there are some CRMs that are more targeted to specialty audiences. So you can see probably a bunch of different names on there that have been in the space for a long time. Obviously, there's Salesforce, there's Razor's Edge, and there's some that are newer on there, like a Beacon CRM hasn't been around for that long. So we wanted to get a pretty good representative sampling of a lot of different sizes of nonprofit CRMs, whether they're huge and have a ton of clients or they're kind of new and up and coming in the space. Okay, on to the process for the research and analysis. This is where the work got real. You can see on the screen in front of you a screenshot from our evaluation matrix. So this is where we ranked each platform on a scale from 0 to 5. So 0 being, does this platform not even have this functionality at all? Doesn't exist. It's not in it. For a 1, we would never, it has it, but we would never recommend that functionality. We don't like it. We don't think it's good. We would never recommend it. 2, we generally would not recommend it, except maybe in specific scenarios it might make sense. 3, we neither would nor would not. It's kind of that in the middle ranking. 4, we could recommend it, but there are better out there. And then 5 was a strong recommend. We really think this is kind of the cream of the crop. This is the best of the best. We love this functionality for this specific platform. You'll also see on there, actually, if you stay on that, yeah, thanks, Matt, that we did rank the different requirements by priorities. You'll see the nice to haves, the must haves, the should haves. And that's because, as you're going through an evaluation process yourself, you should have an understanding of how important each requirement is to you. Is that a critical feature? Is it not a critical feature? And you might see a few things on here. For example, I'm looking at the first row on donation form rating. That's marked as a nice to have in our evaluation. And that's not because you don't have to have donation forms. It's more because when you're looking at a CRM, some CRMs come with donation forms built into them, and some of them don't. And you would integrate with a third-party donation platform. And so having donation forms within the CRM itself, that's great. That's awesome if it has a good donation form tool, but you also do have other options for integration out there. So that's a little bit of how we were thinking about the prioritization of these different requirements. So there were 2 levels of the research and the analysis that we did. So the first level that we did was desk research, of going through what is all the information that is available online, on their website, in their knowledge base, and doing a first rating against all the priorities from what's publicly available online. Just one side note, I would also say that the quality of the documentation for a CRM that's online is a really good bellwether for how good of a product it is. I know we've all been in the situation where maybe we change our mind about something as we start to write it down and try to articulate it. And so usually if a platform has publicly available information and documentation about their platform, that means that they're more likely to follow good software development practices and also have a pretty well thought out product. It's not a perfect rule, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb as you're evaluating not just a CRM, but honestly, any kind of technology. The quality of their documentation is pretty important to consider, and a helpful tool to evaluate. So we did that first round of desk research. We did our first round of ratings, got everything in there. If we couldn't really find any information online for a specific platform, we did eliminate it within that first round of desk research, just because if you have to go through a sales process to even get any information about a tool, that's not a great start. But after that first round of evaluation, we did go into a second round of evaluation where we were scheduling demos, and we were having the people who have the CRMs themselves walk us through each of those requirements and show us live, okay, how does this work? What does it actually look like when you get in the driver's seat and you use the platform? And we updated our ratings after that second level of evaluation of walking through live on the platforms. Okay, that's a lot of methodology. I feel like we kind of did a scientific study and it really was. It felt like that. And that's pretty close to what we do as CauseMic when we're picking platforms. Not in a general sense for our specific clients, but
Here's a fun question for you, Kelsey. How in the world did you all squeeze this in to your regular job? I need to know that.
it's a great question. I think having a team of 7 really helps because you divide and conquer and then everybody's picking off little parts of it. But we just had to prioritize it. Like I think that this is one of those things that could have fallen by the wayside of like, oh, we need to know what's going on in this space, but we've got too much going on in our day-to-day work. And this was really a moment of prioritizing what's important versus what's urgent and giving my team the flexibility to say, yes, we're going to prioritize this over some other things and helping your team think through that, because I think that's also how a nonprofit needs to think about a selection process overall is your day-to-day work doesn't stop while you're going through a CRM migration. And particularly for, the tactical executors on your team, uh, donations don't stop coming in. They've got to keep doing their jobs. And so how leadership supports prioritization of the project is actually really important. So we had to take our own methodology and what we preach to our clients and actually reflect it back on ourselves.
Is this a subtle way of you like explaining all the things that you all said no to that I was coming up with ideas while we are in the middle of this project saying, hey, we agreed that this was the priority map. Can you calm down for a moment? So anyway, noted. I hear that.
Hey, to anybody else out there, that's my favorite tool that I use with when you're managing up. It's sure I can do
I like
that,
that you
but do
didn't
you
want to
want me to
name me there.
deprioritize the other thing?
That was solid, Kelsey. Way not to name me in that. All right, next.
Next slide. Okay, yep, enough methodology. Let's move on to the actual picks. Let's get excited. So drum roll, please. Woo. So the top 3 platforms that we landed on as our recommended nonprofit CRMs are, in no particular order, HubSpot, Virtuous, and Salesforce. These platforms just far and away ranked above the rest in the ratings. And there's definitely a lot of nuance. There's a lot of differences between these 3 platforms. So we have actually thought about and are going to go through which nonprofits are these platforms best suited for? Because I think for the people in the room, you probably recognize these names. I would be surprised if you didn't, but I couldn't say across the board I would recommend HubSpot for every single one of you, or Virtuous for every single one of you, or Salesforce for every single one of you. It's really going to depend a lot on your own unique needs, fundraising, marketing, programs, and operations. And so I want to spend a couple of minutes talking through kind of the nuances of what we're excited about with these platforms and when it makes sense for you versus when it might make sense to look at one of the other ones. So let's first dive into HubSpot. So HubSpot is and has been for a while the marketing automation tool of the future. It really, the marketing tools I think far and away are better than most of the other tools on the market. But they've also invested a ton of time in becoming an all-in-one CRM over the past few years. So that was, they started in the market as a marketing tool, but they really have put a lot of effort into becoming an all-in-one CRM. And so what that means is that you do get access to best-in-class sales and marketing tools within a platform that's pretty dang intuitive for users. I think that's feedback that we get really often about HubSpot is end users love it, which is always a good sign because in many CRMs, the end users are the ones complaining about it. So we love to hear that about the HubSpot interface and how users get into it. Its data model is also very flexible and extensible for tracking program data in addition to fundraising data because they offer custom objects. One example is that we actually worked with Goodwill Industries International, kind of the parent Goodwill organization, to build out a structure to track not just their donations, but all of the services that they provide to the other Goodwill members across the country. So they had never seen all of that data in one place of who are all of the organizations that they work with and having those services all in one place. So that was super exciting for them. And a platform like HubSpot gives you that flexibility in a way that's really exciting for organizations that might have been in a smaller nonprofit CRM before that didn't have that kind of flexibility. On the flip side, it is more expensive than some of the other nonprofit specific CRMs on the market. And it is a little bit more geared towards some nonprofits that are more focused on online giving. And if you do a really high volume of like offline checks and gift batching, it might not be the right fit for you. So that's where there's some nuance and balancing. Okay, what is the customization flexibility with HubSpot versus what is the day-to-day operations of your fundraising look like? So there's a lot of things that we're really excited about in there, but also some nonprofits that it may or may not be exactly the right fit for.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we wanted to do is to highlight not just like the platform functionality, but also the true cost of ownership. Like, what does that implementation cost typically for a nonprofit? And I think, just knowing from being a part of a lot of the scoping process with our clients on that front, HubSpot is very flexible, but does require some real customization as a CRM. Not just as a marketing automation solution, which you can integrate with a different CRM. But so in that case, the implementation cost is a little bit higher, but we can still get that done very quickly in just 3 months. So just throwing that out there too, because that is a real cost. And one of the things we also like about HubSpot is that because it's so easy to use and doesn't require as high of a technical aptitude to maintain, you don't need as high of a skill technical person on staff as you might with some of the others that were, like Salesforce, for example, that Kelsey will speak to. So there's some considerations like that we also like to help clients kind of think through is, all right, what's the functionality, what's the implementation cost, what's the cost of ownership, and how do those things kind of come together? So anyway, ready for the next one?
Yeah, I think ready to move on to Virtuous. And yeah, or I guess maybe one more point on that, Matt, around the cost of ownership and kind of thinking about the people management. Salesforce is really that highest in terms of needing somebody who has that specialist admin skill. Whereas with HubSpot, you do want to designate somebody who's going to be your HubSpot admin so that there's clear responsibility there. But we see organizations that's usually just a regular person that's on the marketing or the fundraising team, and they don't necessarily have to have an IT background to be able to take that on and really thrive and manage it. So it's
To
kind
all
of
you
that middle
marketers
ground.
out there, I apologize that Kelsey called you a regular person. What she means. Anyway, we're gonna let that one slide because it's the day after the election, Kelsey. So you're not at
I
your top,
apologize.
but
No
all
offense to
right.
anyone here.
You regular people. All right, you specialists. Let's hear about Virtuous.
Oh gosh, sorry. I got to take the hat off sometimes. Got to remember that. Thanks, Matt. Always check me. Always check me. All right. Next, we have Virtuous CRM. So we're really, really excited about Virtuous. It's a great platform for nonprofits that want to grow in both the online and offline donation space. I want to log into their CRM and immediately see nonprofit specific language and key metrics that you care about. I would say it's the only CRM on our list that is actually fully targeted to nonprofits. Obviously, HubSpot and Salesforce cater more to the for-profit space, but also serve nonprofits. So one of the things that's really exciting about Virtuous is really, yeah, you log in and immediately you're seeing retention rates and lifetime giving and language that feels very familiar. And yeah, they know nonprofits at their core. So they've come up to with solutions for really common nonprofit issues and challenges. I can't see everybody's hands, but I would. I'm virtually seeing anyone who's had trouble tracking donations from donor advised funds and how to credit those. Um, Virtuous has thought about that. They
That's
have a solution for that.
100% of people's hands
Yeah.
that are on this webinar raised. Yeah, thank you. Whoever
Yeah.
just threw your hand up, thank you for that.
Yeah, the number of conversations that I've had about that, I think that literally not a project goes by without talking about donor advised funds. So super exciting to see that in the Virtuous product of how they do pass-through giving. I love it. It's awesome. And other common nonprofit things like complex receipting requirements. You've got stock gifts, you've got matching gifts, you've got donor advised fund gifts. They have a lot of functionality built in so that you can run those receipts with confidence. Um, I've been on that team. I've done that. I've run receipts. It's hard. And nobody wants to do a mail merge anymore. But I'm sure there's some of you out there that are still doing that, and it's rough. It's rough times. Um, so yeah, so anyways, Virtuous has really put a ton of time and thinking into what nonprofits need and serving it up in an easy to understand user interface that works for your development team, works for your executive team, even board members. Maybe you have board members who are fundraising for you that need to see some high level statistics. They've got solutions for that. Um, I would say one of the things to consider is that as a nonprofit CRM, it is not built out to be quite as flexible in terms of the custom data tracking that I was just talking about with HubSpot. And we'll talk about a little bit with Salesforce. So if you really want to see all of that like program data and fundraising data in one place, it might not be the best option for you because they don't have custom objects, or at least they don't support it at this time. Um, but it really does empower your fundraisers and your fundraising team in really powerful ways. So yeah, just some things to think about. And in terms of also that cost of ownership, Matt, that you were talking about with HubSpot, I would say it's definitely the lowest software cost and the lowest implementation cost as well. One of the reasons why you see the average implementation timeline is a little bit longer, I think, than we had on HubSpot is because they have a really, really good academy that they have all new customers go through before you start implementation. So that's baked into that timeline. The actual build and data migration time is not a full 5 months. But once you get through that academy, like you're going to be ready to be rocking and rolling and flying in that platform. And I love that they really do require that so that day one, your users are getting into the system and they're like, yeah, I saw all of this. I know exactly where I'm going. I know where to navigate around. I'm just ready to go and ready to use it.
That makes me think we should have had a fourth bullet, which is like adoption timeline. And that is one of the
Mm,
things that we really liked about Virtuous. And actually all three of these have online um online destinations to go through training. It's just that Virtuous is 100% dedicated to that nonprofit audience. So adoption is
mhm,
really, really important because we always say this, like the implementation is the easiest part. I mean, it's tried and true. We have a step-by-step process, but adoption requires changing the way you're working or thinking. And so that part
mhm.
just it's interesting because it does add a couple of months, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be actually up and running in the system any slower than with the other platforms, maybe even faster. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love how, yeah, all of their resources are just going to feel kind of immediately relevant for the people that are on this call, right? Like
Mm.
their academy, totally targeted to nonprofits. And they do these expert hours, I think on a monthly basis, maybe a little bit more that are targeted toward different roles. So I think the most recent one was the major gift officer role. Like,
Yeah.
how do you become an expert in that? And I just love that their resources are so immediately relevant for the group of people that are on this call.
Yeah. We do have one question, Kelsey, that I think we could answer right now, which is
Sure.
around like less advanced automation tools compared to other platforms. Can we elaborate on that? Like, what does that mean? When you think about HubSpot versus Virtuous, for example, marketing automation, or Virtuous, I guess, versus a lot of the other platforms you evaluated, what kind of functionality do they get and what don't they get?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say, so both of them have automation tools, they have workflows. So in Virtuous, you're getting the ability to update data fields, add tags, send emails, send an SMS. You also, they have a really cool integration with I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically a direct mail provider so that, let's say I reach my $500 giving threshold, a letter is actually automatically mailed out to them through snail mail, which I love. Super cool. It's obviously, it's not a big direct mail campaign. It's an individual letter. Um, so you can do a lot of those different touch points, and Virtuous has those, has an automation tool that will allow you to, yeah, have different touch points, delays, move people through kind of a sequence. Where it doesn't have quite as much power as something like a HubSpot is, I would call the more back end automation. So that is things like more complex data management things. So like if um, I'm trying to think of a good example, but there's more that you can do in a HubSpot or a Salesforce around like changing data on certain triggers. Whereas with Virtuous, it would be like a simple adding a tag, removing a tag, changing like one specific field value. And so that's something where in our process, we would kind of determine like, what does that look like for you? What are your needs as a nonprofit? Maybe you don't need that level of automation where you're doing a lot of different back-end data management. Um, and because Virtuous has more of the functional tools, like for example, the receipting tool is very powerful, the query tool is really powerful. You might not have to rely on that automation as much as you might need to customize in a HubSpot or a Salesforce.
Okay. Thank you, Kelsey. I'm going to move on to the last one here.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, so last but not least, we have Salesforce. I think you literally can't say the word CRM without saying Salesforce in the same sentence. So
Is this
um,
because you live in San Francisco?
it might be because I literally am looking at Salesforce Tower out of my
Okay, okay, fair enough. Fair. I was just checking. I was just checking.
Yeah, that is okay. I feel called out, but yes, maybe. Um, Yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with it, it's been a go-to nonprofit CRM for the past 10 years and has invested a ton in the community throughout that time. And there are so many things that we love about Salesforce, you know, as I said, the unparalleled automation capabilities and customization options. It's kind of the sky's the limit with Salesforce. It really, for a Salesforce admin, opens up so many possibilities of what you can build, and you can truly get a constituent 360 view on this platform. I think better than any other platform on the market. You know, you can have your donors, your volunteers, your program participants. All of that can exist in the Salesforce platform, all on one record, in a way that's really exciting. And for nonprofits that want to invest in making that happen and leveraging their data and making sure it all flows in and managing it in that way, Salesforce is definitely still the number one in the market on that front. But they are continuing to move up market, and you know the cost to maintain Salesforce can be high if you don't invest in that internal capacity for for managing the platform, managing your data, making sure you're staying up to date with the releases and the new functionality. And so particularly if you're thinking about implementing a Salesforce, taking a people-centric approach is really, really critical of not just I'm buying this software and the software will exist here, but I'm buying this software and what is the team? How does this get managed? How do we support it is so critical in that conversation. So there's definitely a lot to dig into on what a Salesforce implementation would look like for a nonprofit. And that's why I think on particularly these implementations, we spend the most time documenting what are your user requirements because the customization options are so high. And it can really be tailored to individual use cases. So yeah, that's the results. That's where we landed. Those are the 3 platforms. For more in the weeds information about each of those platforms and the selections, we do have our nonprofit CRM guide, which we'll be releasing. But yeah, I guess Matt, maybe I want to hand it over to you to talk about some
Sure.
process things.
I will try my best to follow the act that you have done. It won't be as good. I just want to warn everybody. So if the numbers start to drop, oh look, they did. Somebody found out it was me, so 2 people left. This is hard. All right. So let's I'm gonna go through this part a little bit quickly so that we have some more time for Q&A for people. So I think that one of the things that we find really kind of unique in our approach, and this isn't how we started, so I'll admit that we've actually moved the way that we help nonprofits select and implement technology, because we found that this is the best approach. And for that, I want to talk about first what we see is kind of wrong with the way people approach selecting technology, and that is that people don't oftentimes first align on what their strategy is for growing their audience, and what their fundraising strategy is going to be. And it's really important to start with that. Kelsey mentioned, for example, that, oh, if you're doing a lot of offline gift processing, for example, then that is going to impact which CRM, what technology you need. If you're leaning into peer-to-peer fundraising, if you're leaning into events, if you're going to end up pairing up with corporate partners and you want to tap into marketing dollars, not philanthropic dollars, then you need to report on marketing KPIs to that corporate partner. Website visits, what's the demographic, what's the psychodemographic, all that kind of information. How are you attributing revenue to different marketing pieces? That is a totally different set of requirements to somebody who is thinking about growing their fundraising through a grant. Like, let's say we're going to really lean into grants, and we're gonna apply for a bunch of restricted grants, as that's how we're going to fund our work. So it's important to first align on the strategy, and we actually find that is not the case. Usually people will begin to demo a bunch of platforms without first aligning on the strategy. So this is the process that we like to take people through in order to select the right technology. So it doesn't take a lot of time, like meaning calendar weeks, but it's really important to align. So the first thing is to align on what your actual fundraising strategy is going to be. Who are you going after? What are those tactics, like some of the ones I just described? Then we actually like to help clients map out by audience, what is their donor journey going to look like? And we focus on remarkable donor journeys, and we define that as somebody who actually, it's so good that you're telling your friends about it. I can't believe that this nonprofit sent me this really cool piece of content. It was so valuable. I can't believe I got a behind the scenes look at what's going on in their hurricane response in Florida, for example. It's so cool. So we map out what are the touch points by audience, mid, major, corporate, foundation, et cetera. And then evaluate the technology against the strategy and what your constituent journey is going to look like, for volunteers, fundraisers, donors, program, et cetera. And so that kind of process takes about a month. And then the second phase is actually that implementation that we talked about, that 3 to 6 month process, where okay, great, we've aligned on our strategy. Now let's go ahead and do the implementation. And depending on which CRM you end up selecting, that process for adoption post-implementation can take, a few months or a couple of years, depending on how sophisticated of an organization you are and which platform you're moving to, because maybe you have to reimagine how you're working in order to drive adoption and increase the rate of adoption. So this first piece, this actionable fundraising strategy, to do this, how can we do that in just a week? We actually use structured exercises in order to help teams surface ideas, prioritize, then go back and validate, and then align on a go forward strategy. And so we've tested this out many times remotely and in person. And every single time we do it, we ask, how can we make this better? How can we make it more effective? How can we make it more efficient? And we refine it along the way. And that really helps us to anchor the technology selection around the strategy. The output of that work is essentially this one-page strategic plan. This is from one of our clients, Pair. We've already removed a bunch of stuff that is specific to them, like all the information. But essentially, first, we really wanted to align on how are they going to raise money? How are they going to reach their fundraising goal? And what KPIs are important? How are they going to measure success? And that helped to actually evaluate technology against that strategy. Oh, look at that. I had some things that I didn't know were automated, so I apologize. So here's some of the things that we like to align on in that first week. And then the remarkable donor journey, we actually come up with each of those touch points, but we teach people how to create individual milestones for the project. Who is it assigned to? Is it realistic? Do you need to scale back? Like Kelsey was saying, prioritization. Hey, what are we going to stop doing if we're going to do this CRM evaluation, Matt? Like we have to stop doing a bunch of stuff. So we teach people how to kind of think about, hey, what is the stuff that we've been doing all the time? Like I'll take an annual report as a good example. We look at people's annual reports and I don't know, they're not exciting, they're not interesting, they're not engaging, and they just seem like an obligation. Like we have to get this thing out. We've always done this. So that's something that we help clients rethink about. Like, should we modify this? Should it be a digital version? Should it be a one-pager instead of a big report? And you actually go through each of those components, and that will help you determine, oh, what's our distribution plan? How are we going to send this to donors? How are we going to measure whether it's working? And all that stuff goes into your technology requirements. So that's super, super important. Now, with this in mind, we actually use the strategy to determine what the requirements are. So similar to Kelsey had that matrix, we actually build one of these for each client. So this is just an example of what that could look like. There's more columns that we have, but the three really most important ones are, okay, as this role, like as an event staff member, for example, I need to, in plain speak, practically, this is what I need to do. I need to define dynamic multi-day, multi-tracking conference data around like the size of the room and who's speaking and who's attending and all this different stuff, so that I can deliver relevant information needed to organize my day-to-day. So that is a technical requirement that an event staff person has. Another one might be like, as the major gift officer, I need to be able to see who has given given last year but not this year, but who recently opened an email, so that I can schedule a one-on-one follow-up, or so that I can prioritize reaching out to that person because they're clearly interested. So that's an example of a requirement. You're coming off mute. What do you got, Kelsey?
Yeah, I just want to, for anyone that's not familiar with user stories, I just wanted to jump in and say that the so that part of it is so critical. It might seem kind of obvious as you're writing it out of like, duh, this is the reason why I need this thing. But because with technology, sometimes there's multiple ways to get to a certain configuration. Having that so that clearly defined really, really helps your implementation team make sure that they're actually getting you the thing that you need at the end of the day. And it might be that actually there's a better way to configure to get you that result. So yeah, I just wanted to call that out for anybody that hasn't ever worked in user stories. It's a very common software development tool. Just to understand that articulating kind of the why of something is going to make any implementation so much more successful. So I just wanted to call that out.
Nice. I agree. Thank you. I was sorry, I got excited.
All right,
I
threw
started
you off.
answering a question. I'm multitasking, which is not good. I'm answering questions. All right. So then once we have those requirements, that's when we actually go through a vendor evaluation. I think a lot of people, I'm not, I think, I know people jump to this. They go and they do the vendor evaluation. Guess what? People who work at these different CRMs, the top three, as well as all the others, are really good at selling their technology. So they're going to show you the things that they think are their strengths. But by first gathering what your requirements are and asking them to demonstrate how the platform works, that is how you are going to, one, increase the probability that your CRM is going to meet your requirements. But two, it's actually how you begin to get buy-in from the various stakeholders who are going to be using the platform. It doesn't work when like one or two people at the organization select a CRM. It's much better if you have an inclusive process where people are a part of determining what the strategy is, defining those requirements, and then evaluating the platform against those requirements. And so the way that we do that to help streamline the process so that someone isn't a part of everything is, for our clients, when we identify what their requirements are, we identify 2 to 3 specific platforms. Maybe it's a CRM, but it might also be a giving platform, or it might be a volunteer management system, or it might be these different pieces that all kind of tie into it. So that's the best way to do it, is to, once you have those requirements, to go out and ask for vendor demos and evaluation. I know that process may be new, or it may seem like onerous. Why do we have to define our strategy? Even if we have a strategy, why do we have to align on that strategy and revisit that strategy? And it is about that stakeholder alignment. And so, for example, we supported the Surfrider Foundation and recently finished up a 3-year digital transformation for them. And what's interesting is, Kelsey didn't get a chance to talk about it in this webinar. We probably do a whole nother webinar on it, is sometimes we actually combine these platforms. So in the case of Surfrider, for example, Salesforce was their primary CRM because they had a lot of custom requirements that weren't available, like by leveraging HubSpot on its own. But HubSpot is their engagement CRM, and the two integrate. And that actually allowed for the easy use at the chapter level. They've got 80 chapters around the country. And some of those chapters have volunteers, and some of them have professional staff. And so ease of use was really important. So something like Marketing Cloud within the Salesforce ecosystem didn't make sense. So they were able to get the best of both. They were able to have a CRM that met their complex requirements from a programmatic standpoint and from a chapter standpoint. Sometimes we run into this too when platforms are like nonprofits have HIPAA compliance might be an issue. So you might, on the program side, need a CRM that's HIPAA compliant, but on the engagement side, you might not. So it's about kind of making sure that you understand what your strategy is, and then really mapping out what the journey is going to be, and then evaluating the technology against it. So I really talked about this enough at this point. So with that in mind, we're going to move into answering some of the questions that are coming in now. You can use the Q&A feature. We're going to get to as many of these as possible. If we don't get to your question, or you might have a very specific use case or a specific need, we're here to help you. You can, take a copy of this QR code. We can talk on, we can visit us at CauseMic.com. We could talk about your unique needs, and we can also walk you through that 30-day program that I talked about. So we're here to help you. And with that, let's dive into these questions. So I'm going to,
I'll
you already have one?
You, Matt, Kelsey. And just as a reminder, I saw Maddie and we had a few other anonymous folks ask the same question. This presentation, the slides, and the CRM guide are all going to be shared with you. So you will get all those things to have to look back as a reference. So just, we had several people ask about that. So just know that that's coming your way very soon after the webinar ends. We have a ton of technical questions, and we do have about 11 minutes. So I'm gonna just toss a few of those your way, Matt and Kelsey, but just want to be mindful of everyone's time. Kelsey, you had mentioned, and you just answered a question about the dollar signs that were on HubSpot, Salesforce, and Virtuous. Could you, because I'm seeing several questions about that, could you explain just sort of when it says average implementation cost, and when it says like $1 sign, $2 sign, $3 signs, could you just give a quick one more summary of that? And then if that doesn't answer everyone's questions, if you'll give me a follow-up, I'll try to pitch it back to the presenters.
Yeah, I think it's easier to start maybe with the platform costs because I definitely saw that in the Q&A. So the reason why we put the dollar signs in there versus like actual hard numbers is because for each of the platforms, there's a lot of different variables that go into the pricing for them. And so uh, how the pricing looks for one nonprofit versus another could vary pretty widely. Some of those variables are number of marketing contacts, um, both HubSpot and Virtuous base a lot of their pricing on the number of contacts that you're actually marketing to. So if you've only got 10,000, that's a lot less than 100,000. So there's a pretty big variety there. There's also the question of like which add-ons and which modules would you want / make use of. So for example, with Virtuous, do you want to add on the volunteer management solution? Do you want to add on event management? Do you want to use the SMS tool? For HubSpot, do you want to use their service hub? Do you want to use their sales hub tools? Um, there's a lot of different ways that they've structured this so that you're able to kind of pick and choose from a buffet menu of I need that functionality, but I don't need that other functionality. So um, yeah, if anyone has kind of like specific questions around this is my overall nonprofit profile and what I think I need, like we could help you triangulate a little bit more in terms of what your platform pricing might look like.
Yeah, and the same is true of implementation. I just answered a question on that as well. For that, we looked at there's typically like a pretty big range. Like HubSpot, for example, um, that ranges from about $11,000 up to call it 50,000. But we looked at the average and tried to plug that in. And yeah, it's perfectly imperfect. I would say that it is unique to your needs. So that's where hop in on a call with us and we can actually walk through, what your requirements are and give you a better sense. And then also in some of our clients, like they play a bigger part in data migration, or it just really depends on so many factors. Which CRM are you coming from? How many sources? All kinds of stuff. So that's why we place the average in there.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for speaking to that. Like I said, if it didn't satisfy your question there, please post another question in the Q&A. I'm getting a couple of maybe this could be a spicy question. I don't know, but I'm gonna throw it your way anyway. But can you talk a little bit about what is going to go into we talked about the CRM guide because several folks are asking, what about this platform? What about that platform? Can you compare Monday.com to the three that we recommended? What are people going to get in the CRM guide, and what would you want them to do if they want to know more information about a platform we don't talk about?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the CRM guide will talk about our methodology. It'll give some examples. It'll break down the strengths and weaknesses of our top three. What we aren't planning, we're not going to be sharing publicly our full analysis of all of the various platforms. Um, but we are willing to, if you have, your unique use case and you want to hop on a call with us, you can schedule that at CauseMic.com and we can literally talk about your requirements and look at the various CRMs and evaluate them against your requirements. But we're not going to share the entire evaluation out publicly. Monday.com was not one of the ones evaluated, so I'll say for that one. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Kelsey. I'm not trying to put you in a hot seat on like talking to one we didn't evaluate at all.
Ooh, Matt, you're breaking up a little bit, so
Okay,
I'll
it's
jump in
me who's
there.
breaking up things. Okay,
Break up the robot.
the hard question, so I give it to you.
Um, yeah, I mean, we didn't look at Monday.com's CRM solutions. Oftentimes there's kind of a category of, I would say, platforms that are like the Airtables, the Smartsheet, the Monday.coms that kind of started as a different tool, but also can be used as a CRM that we generally did not evaluate because they do require so much customization to tailor them to your needs in a different way than like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. But yeah, I would be interested in diving into that a little bit more, can look into it, but they're kind of a whole different beast where you're almost creating something very much from scratch. So um, a different way to think about an implementation.
All right, cool. Thank you. We've got a great question here from Jennifer Kelsey for you. They said, I think most folks are here today because they're unhappy with their current CRM. CRM is going to require a learning curve. And did you rate the onboarding / learning options for each CRM? I know Matt spoke to that with having buy-in from folks for the organization, but can you talk a little bit about how that went into the evaluation process?
Yeah, definitely the learning materials available and then also the support offered. I think when you're evaluating a CRM, understanding what post go live support looks like for that platform is really important because, you know, for CauseMic, we might help you with an implementation, or maybe they would have implementation services themselves. But you know, throughout your next year, 2 years, 3 years, you're still going to have questions that come up. And so if they're responsive, if it's included in your contract, if they offer phone, chat, email, like how many different channels of support they offer is also really important to understand about that platform. You know, it could be a great platform, but if you are never going to be able to access support, that's something that you would have to consider of can we manage that? Is that something that we can try to figure out most stuff ourselves, or are they really there to help you every step of the way and committed to making sure that you're successful on the platform? So that
Great.
was definitely one of our ratings. Yeah.
Acknowledging that we have about 4 minutes left here, I'm going to ask you a question that you can choose to fully answer or just give us a quick summary of. But can you speak to how AI was a part of the top 3 CRM picks?
It's a great question. It's a great one to maybe end on, because it is always, I think AI is such a big conversation topic. What I would say is that that is actually, it's evolving so quickly that um, it was definitely a part of the evaluation of like, are they investing in integrating AI into the tool? Is that something where they are thinking about it, they are figuring it out? How is this best going to serve our customers? That was one of our ratings that we did. Um, there's a lot of variety within the platforms of what that's actually looking like and shaping up to be. And even just now, you know, September is kind of conference and release season for some of the big CRMs. And so there was huge announcements at both Salesforce and HubSpot about, you know, AI agents and how they're integrating AI into the platform. So I would say our thinking on AI is still evolving with the rapidly moving industry. But what we looked at was like, how are they thinking about AI, and are they doing it in a way that is going to actually help nonprofits move the needle versus evaluating like which exact specific AI tools they were offering.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna offer us the flexibility to be able to move forward with everyone on that. That's a good way to think about it. Matt, we've got 2 minutes left. Can you wrap us up? Remind everyone that there will be a survey at the end of this and put a bow
Oh
on it.
yeah. Please take our survey. We appreciate it. We spend a ton of time, as Kelsey mentioned, 4 months went into this research project, but also a lot of time into producing these webinars, and it really helps us understand if it's a value. Is there a topic that is a value to you? Could we have done something better, different? So just when we close out, you'll get a quick survey. It'll only take like 15 seconds, please. It's a small price to pay for 4 months of Kelsey's team's research. So we would appreciate hearing from you. And otherwise, I would say, yeah, if you have other questions or specific use cases, come visit us, CauseMic.com. And we have lots of free resources on there, and as well as a phone call with us. So you can check that out.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for your time. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.